My name's Jake Morales. I'm 38 years old. And for 16 of those years, I've been an industrial mechanic. My hands are scarred. My back aches most nights. My work boots have more miles on them than most people's cars. But everything I build, it lasts. I fix what's broken. That's what I do. Machines. Motors. Generators, doesn't matter. Give me something that's falling apart, and I'll make it run again. I've spent half my life covered in oil, metal dust, and the kind of grime that never quite washes out. But there's pride in that. It's honest work. And it's never lied to me. When I come home, there's a small moment right before I walk through the front door where I wipe my hands on my jeans and tell myself, "You're doing all this for her." Her name's Alyssa, 35. Marketing executive at a company called Silverline. Sharp. Beautiful. Polished in a way that turns heads when she walks into a room. I used to love that about her. The confidence. The drive. The way she'd light up when she talked about her goals. But somewhere along the way, that light stopped reaching me. Now, when I walk in after a 12-hour shift, she's on the couch with her phone in her hand, scrolling, smiling at a screen that doesn't include me. Her hair's perfect. Her perfume fills the room. And I'm standing there with my lunch pail and grease-stained uniform, feeling like a stranger in my own house. She doesn't even look up when I say, "Hey." I used to get a smile, a kiss, a question about my day. Now, I get silence. Or worse, indifference. It started small. The distance. A forgotten dinner together. A canceled weekend plan. Then it grew into something colder. Something that feels like contempt. When she talks to me now, it's with that tone like I'm something she's obligated to tolerate. She corrects the way I phrase things. Makes little comments about career advancement and personal growth. Words that sound like compliments but feel like reminders that I don't belong in her world anymore. Sometimes I catch her looking at me like I'm something from an old life she can't quite throw away. A relic. A man who still thinks calloused hands mean something. I'll be sitting there at dinner, talking about a machine we got running again, or a problem I solved at work. And she'll nod politely, but her eyes are somewhere else. I can tell she's thinking about someone's presentation, or a client dinner, or whatever new executive title she's chasing. It used to be different. When we first got married, she used to brag about me to her friends. My husband works with machines that power entire factories. She'd say, "He can fix anything." I remember the pride in her voice. Back then, it didn't matter that my hands were rough, or that my clothes smelled like diesel. She said it made me real. Solid. Now, I'm not sure she sees me at all. Sometimes, when I get home late and see her laptop open on the table, glowing against the dark, I just stand there and stare. Because that blue light, the one reflecting off her face, it's like a wall between us. I don't know when she built it, but it's there. And it's getting taller every day. I keep telling myself this is just a rough patch. That people grow and change. That maybe I'm just being sensitive. But deep down, I know better. Something's shifting. Slowly. Quietly. The warmth that used to live in this house is gone, and I can't shake the thought that somewhere between her promotions and my overtime shifts, she stopped seeing me as her husband and started seeing me as a reminder of what she's outgrown about. It started with small things, little cracks you could almost miss if you weren't looking for them. Alyssa began making comments that didn't sound like jokes anymore. "Must be nice to just clock out at 5. She'd say while typing away on her laptop. Or, "You should think about going back to school, get a degree. Maybe move into something more professional. More professional." That one stuck with me. I didn't say anything at first. I told myself she was tired, stressed, maybe just venting about work. But words have weight. And when they come from someone you love, they hit like hammers. She used to brag about me, told her friends I could fix anything. That I was the kind of man who makes the world run. Now, she acted embarrassed when I talked about my job. If someone asked what I did, she'd jump in fast, "He's in operations." Like she was ashamed to say the word mechanic. I started noticing changes. Little ones. At first, her wardrobe shifted from simple to sharp pencil skirts. Heels that cost more than my tools. Handbags with names I couldn't pronounce. Her phone was always on the table. Face down. Always locked. She started speaking a different language, one made of buzzwords and ambition. Words like synergy, vertical growth, and client visibility. I remember thinking, She doesn't talk like a person anymore. She talks like a PowerPoint slide. Every sentence came with a price tag. Like she was pitching her life instead of living it. Meanwhile, I was just, still me. The same guy who brought home takeout on Fridays. Who fixed the sink when it leaked. Who built our deck with his own hands. But suddenly, that wasn't enough. She'd come home late, saying she had client dinners. I'd ask who she was with, and she'd rattle off names I'd never heard. People like Evan from finance or Melissa from PR? I'd nod, pretending to understand. Pretending not to notice the way she said dinner, like it was part of her job description. One night, she walked in smelling like expensive wine and someone else's cologne. Not mine. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine, and went straight to the shower. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the door she'd just closed, and something deep inside me twisted. That was the moment my instincts woke up. I've spent my whole life listening to machines, knowing when a motor's off by the sound it makes, when pressure's building where it shouldn't, and right then, I heard it, that same off-balance hum. The one that comes right before everything breaks. I knew something was wrong. She started talking about people from work, like they were her new family. Evan's brilliant. Grant's such a visionary. I'd listen, half smiling, half dying inside, because I could feel it. She admired them in a way she'd stopped admiring me. I tried to fight it, tried to remind her of what we had, cooked her favorite meal, planned a weekend away. She said she was too busy, had a strategic planning session on Saturday. Strategic planning. That used to mean we'd sit at the kitchen table with bills and talk about vacations, mortgages, real life. Now it meant him. Whoever he was. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. She started dressing up on casual Fridays. And when I'd ask simple questions, "You okay?" or "You need help with something?" she'd snap back with, "Don't be paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid. See, there's a certain kind of silence that only comes when someone's lying to you. It's heavy, sharp. It fills every corner of the room, even when they're smiling at you. And that's when I knew, whatever this was between us, it wasn't marriage anymore. It was a transaction. Somewhere between her late nights and my overtime, my wife stopped being my partner and started being someone I didn't recognize at all. It happened on a Tuesday night. I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating leftover lasagna straight from the container, half watching a rerun on TV when she walked in. Her heels clicked across the floor like they had something to prove. "Jake," she said softly. It caught me off guard. She hadn't said my name like that in months, like it actually meant something. "I need to ask you something." I looked up, waiting for the usual: a bill, a chore, a complaint. But her tone was different. Careful. Rehearsed. "There's a company gala downtown next Friday," she said. "Formal. Clients. Executives. Everyone will be there. I want you to come." For a second, I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Alyssa had been at Silverline for 6 years. In all that time, she'd never invited me to a single company event. Not one. Every time I'd offered, she'd had an excuse ready. "You wouldn't fit in. It's mostly work talk. You'd be bored." I'd accepted it the same way you accept a closed door you've knocked on too many times. So hearing her suddenly ask me to join her, it didn't feel like inclusion. It felt like strategy. "Why now?" I asked. She blinked, like she hadn't prepared for that question. "Because I want us to spend time together," she said quickly. "You've been distant. I've been distant." That one almost made me smile. She went on, telling me how important this event was, how the company's partners would be there, how it was a great opportunity to network. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and wear your navy suit. The one from your cousin's wedding." That suit hadn't left the closet in 3 years. I was pretty sure the jacket still smelled like champagne and regret. Alyssa didn't notice my silence. She was already moving to her next instruction. "And Jake," she said, without looking at me, "maybe don't mention your job the usual way. Just say you're in operations management." I set my fork down slowly. "Operations management." She nodded, adjusting her earrings in the reflection of the microwave door. "It just sounds a little more professional, you know, for the setting." And that's when I realized she didn't want her husband there. She wanted a prop, someone to stand beside her, look respectably, and keep quiet. Someone to make her look stable. Successful. Complete without actually belonging in her world. I stared at her for a long moment. I thought about every night I'd come home late. About every meal she'd skipped because she was working late. About how she'd turned our marriage into a performance for everyone but me. My instincts told me to refuse. To stay home and let her play her little charade without me. But a different part of me, the quiet, steady part, that's fixed, every broken thing I've ever touched, whispered that I needed to go, not to support her, not to fit in, but to see, to finally look behind the curtain she'd been hiding behind for months. So I said, "Sure, I'll go." She looked relieved, too relieved. And then came the micromanaging. Be ready by 6. Don't drink too much. Try not to talk too much, just let me handle the conversations. I nodded, pretending to listen. But I wasn't really there anymore. I was watching her, studying the way she avoided my eyes when she talked about the party. The way her hands trembled slightly when she mentioned her boss. The way her smile didn't quite reach her face. She thought she was planning a flawless evening. But what she didn't know was that I was planning something too. Something simpler. I was going to that gala. I was going to stand beside her. And I was going to find out, once and for all, what kind of life she'd built without me. Because if she was hiding something, I was ready to see it with my own eyes. The night of the gala arrived like a storm I'd been hearing rumble in the distance for months. The hotel rooftop was the kind of place that screamed money, the kind where even the air smelled expensive. You could see the whole skyline from up there. All glass and gold and arrogance. Waiters floated around with trays of champagne. Everyone dressed like their reflection was the only thing that mattered. Alyssa fit right in. She was breathtaking, not in the way that used to make my chest ache, but in the way that made me realize I didn't know her anymore. Her hair, her jewelry, her smile, everything about her was calculated. The moment we walked in, she switched into another version of herself, the executive's wife mode. Polished, poised, plastic. She clung to my arm for 5 seconds, just long enough for people to see the ring on her finger, then drifted into the crowd like smoke. I stayed quiet, just like she wanted. I smiled when people asked what I did. I'm an industrial mechanic, I said proudly. And every time, I saw it, the same flicker of judgment, the same polite half-smile, the same quick glance toward Alyssa as if to say, "Really? This is your husband?" She laughed louder than usual, touched arms that weren't mine, and told stories that didn't include me. I stood back, beer in hand, watching her perform, watching the distance between us become something visible, something real. Then I noticed him, Evan Pierce, her boss. Tall, smooth, polished in that country club way that only men who've never lifted a day in their life can pull off. And beside him, Grant Lawson, the senior VP, older, graying, married, his ring, glinting under the lights like an afterthought. They circled her like she was part of their territory, laughing, whispering, a hand on her shoulder, a touch on her back. And she didn't move away. At one point, Evan leaned in to whisper something. She threw her head back and laughed, a laugh I hadn't heard in years. Not the soft, real one she used to have. This was rehearsed, exaggerated. The kind of laugh people use when they're trying to impress someone. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that it was just networking, that this was how her world worked. But then I heard the whispers. She's with both of them. They've been passing her around for months. The words slid through the crowd like a knife through silk. I turned 2 women near the bar, drunk enough to forget they had an audience. One of them looked at me, eyes wide. Realizing I'd heard, everything went cold. I scanned the room. Alyssa wasn't there anymore. Neither were Evan or Grant. My heart started pounding. That deep mechanical rhythm I knew too well, like a pressure valve about to burst. I moved through the crowd, past the laughter, past the music, down a hallway marked private. That's when I heard it, her voice, breathless, urgent, mixed with the sounds of men, low, rough, unmistakable. I didn't think. I just pulled out my phone, hit record, and followed the sound. The office door wasn't locked. I pushed it open, and there it was, the truth. Ugly, naked, undeniable. There she was, the woman who told me I wasn't ambitious enough, naked between 2 men who called her team player. For a split second, the world stopped. The music from the party bled faintly through the walls. No one moved. No one breathed. Then she screamed, Evan scrambled to cover himself. Grant cursed and tripped over a chair. I didn't move. I didn't shout. I just stood there, filming, letting the camera capture everything. Words never could. They lunged toward me, begging, swearing. It wasn't what it looked like. I hit them before they could finish the sentence. Years of silence, humiliation, and restraint exploded all at once. When it was over, both of them were on the floor, bloodied, panicked, scrambling to hide what couldn't be hidden. And Alyssa, she was crying. Not from guilt, from exposure. I grabbed one of them by the collar, dragging him down the hall, the other stumbling behind. The music stopped. Conversations froze. Dozens of eyes turned. Two half-dressed executives. One furious husband. One phone still recording. I lifted it high. Everyone wanted to know what these two were doing in that room. I said, my voice steady as stone, well, now you know. The room went silent. Someone gasped. Glass shattered somewhere in the back. And for the first time in months, no one could look down on me. Alyssa stumbled into the light. Her dress twisted. Her makeup running. She tried to speak. Reaching for me like that would erase what I'd seen. I pulled off my wedding ring and threw it at her feet. It bounced once against the marble and rolled to a stop beside her bare heel. We're done, I said. You can stay with your partners, both of them. And I walked out. No shouting. No more begging. Just the sound of her crying, echoing through a room full of people who finally saw the truth. The truth she spent years hiding behind a perfect smile and a polished lie. That was the night everything ended. The night I stopped being the man she could look down on and became the man she could never look in the eye again. By the next morning, the whole city knew. I didn't post the video. Someone else did. Probably one of the guests who filmed part of it on their phone, my wife half-dressed. The two executives bleeding. The crowd frozen in disbelief. It hit the internet like a grenade. The first few hours, it spread through office gossip networks and group chats. Then someone leaked it to social media. And within a day, it was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, news blogs. The caption read, "Corporate scandal executives exposed in office affair." Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Half of them condemning her. Half of them cheering for me. This man's a legend. Finally. Some real justice. Blue-collar revenge. I salute you, brother. Strangers were calling me the hero husband. People were making memes of my face. My quote. That moment I threw the ring at her feet. But I didn't feel like a hero. I wasn't proud. I was just done. Done being disrespected. Done being made to feel small for living honestly. Done pretending that my loyalty meant something to a woman who sold hers for promotions and champagne. While the internet celebrated, I sat in silence. I didn't replay the video. I didn't need to. The images were already burned into my brain. By Monday morning, Silverline's public relations team was in full-blown crisis mode. The footage had been verified. The men's names, Evan Pierce and Grant Lawson, were trending alongside Alyssa's. By noon, the company released an official statement, effective immediately. All 3 employees involved in Friday's incident have been terminated for breach of conduct and company ethics. 3 careers gone. 3 reputations in ashes. When I read that, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. Hold. Steady peace. For 6 years, Alyssa had been building her world around status, the perfect image, the right parties, the right people. Now, all of that was gone in 72 hours. Her name was being torn apart online. Every detail of her life, dissected by strangers who didn't care about her story, just the spectacle. I should have pitied her, but I didn't, because I'd begged her to see me. I'd begged her to come home, and she'd chosen this. That night, she tried to call. Dozens of missed calls. Dozens of texts. Please, Jake, I need to explain. You don't understand. We can fix this. I didn't answer a single one. I called a locksmith instead. Every lock in the house was replaced before sunrise. When the last key turned in the new deadbolt, I finally exhaled. That was the sound of closure. Then I called a lawyer. His name was Raymond Cruz. One of my union brothers had used him during his own divorce. When he picked up, I didn't waste time. Caught my wife cheating. I said, got it on video. He didn't even pause. Send it to me. I did. 15 minutes later, he called back. This is airtight. He said, She gets nothing. I didn't sleep that night. But I wasn't restless either. I sat in the quiet, watching the city lights flicker outside my window, realizing that the chaos had finally stopped. The noise, the lies, the tension, all of it, gone. The next day, when the headlines broke again, I watched from the background while the internet turned her downfall into entertainment. Alyssa Pierce, formerly Morales, became a cautionary tale. Corporate wife's affair goes viral. Executives, fired over rooftop scandal. Silverline stock dipped. Their PR department scrambled. And me, I just went to work. I fixed motors, rewired systems, drank coffee with my crew like any other day, but something was different now. People at the job site looked at me differently. Nods of respect. Quiet smiles. Not because I'd gone viral, but because they understood. Every man there had lived a version of my story. The long hours, the sacrifices, the slow erosion of respect from someone who once promised forever. When one of them slapped me on the back and said, "You did what every man dreams of doing," I just shook my head. No. I told him. I did what I had to do. By the end of the week, I'd filed for divorce. No negotiation. No forgiveness. Just finality. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night not because I'd won, but because the fight was finally over. That's the thing about justice. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's just the sound of a door closing quietly behind you and never opening again. 6 months passed. The noise died down. The viral storm faded into internet history. But the damage it left behind, that never really disappeared. Alyssa's world collapsed. Piece by piece, every company she applied to turned her down quietly. Politely, but firmly. The industry she'd worshipped had erased her. Her name was whispered in boardrooms, flagged in HR meetings, blacklisted without anyone ever saying it out loud. The woman who once spent her days in glass offices and rooftop parties now stood behind a department store counter, scanning barcodes for minimum wage. Her hair lost its shine. Her eyes lost that spark of superiority that used to cut through a room. She went from high heels to cheap flats, from designer bags to clearance racks. And me, I was doing fine. Better than fine. Actually, promoted to lead mechanic. Steady paycheck. Weekends free. My house was quiet. Peaceful. I'd learned that silence isn't loneliness when you've earned your peace. Then one afternoon, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, she was standing there. The ghost of the woman I used to love. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her makeup smudged. Her voice small. "Jake," she whispered. "Please, can we talk?" I looked at her for a long time. Not out of anger. Not even pity. Just disbelief at how far she'd fallen. How much she'd given up to chase an illusion. "I don't think there's much left to say," I told her. She started crying, those same desperate, ugly tears I'd seen the night of the party. "I made a mistake," she said. "I lost everything. I lost you." I shook my head slowly. "No. Alyssa, you didn't lose me. You lost the man who built your entire world while you were trying to impress men who only saw you as entertainment." That silence after it was heavy. She couldn't look at me. I stepped aside, pointed to the black trash bags I'd stacked by the door, everything that was still hers. Clothes. Old photos. Memories I didn't want anymore. She stared at them like she couldn't understand what she was looking at. "You wanted a man with a corner office," I said quietly. "Go knock on their doors." Her tears turned to shaking sobs. But I didn't move. There was nothing left in me to comfort her with. Eventually, she gathered her things and walked back down the driveway. Shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the ground. When her car pulled away, I closed the door, not with anger, but with finality. That was the end. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something that had been missing for years. Freedom. Not the kind that comes from revenge. The kind that comes from finally letting go of everything that was never meant to stay. Time has a funny way of healing you when you stop chasing what broke you. Months passed. Seasons changed. The noise faded. And for the first time in years, life was quiet. The good kind of quiet. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. No phone buzzing with secrets. No cold silence at dinner. Just the hum of the refrigerator. The chirping of crickets outside. And the sound of my own breathing steady. Calm. Free. Work was good. Better than good. I got promoted to supervisor. Leading my own crew, The same guys who used to look at me like one of them. Now looking at me like a leader. Not because I was smarter. Not because I'd changed. Because I'd stayed the same when the world tried to make me feel small. I started coaching Little League on weekends, something I'd always said I'd do when life slowed down. Turns out, life doesn't slow down. You have to hit the brakes yourself. Watching those kids run bases, cheering when they hit the ball, it reminded me of what really matters. The small things. The honest things. Then one Saturday at a community cookout, I met Rachel. She was a teacher. The kind who smiled with her whole face and asked questions because she actually wanted to hear the answers. When I told her what I did for a living, she didn't flinch. She didn't ask if I planned to move up. She just smiled and said, "That's real work. The world needs more of that. No judgment. No pretense. Just truth." We started seeing each other. Slowly. Gently. No grand gestures. No games. Just two people meeting in the middle, both a little broken. Both trying to build something real. It felt different this time. She didn't care about status. Or titles. Or how my hands looked after a long day. She cared that I showed up. That I listened. That I kept my word. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like myself again, not the man Alyssa tried to mold, but the man I'd been all along. One evening, I was closing up the garage when the sun hit the old wedding ring I'd left on a shelf months ago. It gleamed for a second before I picked it up and dropped it into a small box of things I didn't need anymore. That tiny sound, metal against wood, felt like closure. I learned something through all of this. Revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about freeing yourself from the people who never saw your worth. It's not about making them suffer. It's about walking away, rebuilding, and becoming someone they'll never have the privilege of knowing again. These days, I don't think about Alyssa much. Every once in a while, someone brings up the story, calls me a legend. Or that guy from the video. I just smile. Because I know they're talking about someone who doesn't exist anymore. I'm not the man from that video. I'm not the broken husband who needed to prove anything. I'm just Jake, a man who fixed his own life the same way he fixes machines, one wire, one bolt, one step at a time. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this. Don't measure your worth by the size of your paycheck, or the kind of car you drive, or how loud your pain shouts. Measure it by how you carry yourself when everything falls apart, by how quietly you rebuild. Because dignity, that's something they can't take from you. Brothers, if you were me, would you have fought to keep her, or walked away to rebuild in peace? Tell me below. And remember, a real man's worth isn't in his paycheck, it's in his integrity.